Ja, mogę powiedzieć, że twoja rozkoszność I like the recipe.
Can you hear?
Favorite. I like that pretty. That the time like for two other minutes we're sitting on all like until 7 to 1 in the morning kind. Yes, I can like for 7 to I'm sure I'm
Can you see it?
look that we're creating.
It's all the middle.
Let me know when you're ready to start again.
Okay. We'll start in, yeah, I think we can start now.
Okay. Okay, and by the way, everybody, the reason I put references up is I'll give Mong a PDF of the slides afterwards in case anybody's interested. Okay, what did you learn from Robert Waldanger's TED Talk? What makes for a good life? What makes us happier and healthier?
This is the second part of the video, what makes for a happy life. It's meaningful connections.
Yes,
One's life.
yes. Good relationships keep us happier and healthier. Loneliness kills. What else did you learn from it?
Anyone else? What makes for a happy life?
Good relationships are more predictive of a happier, healthier life than having a lot of money, great career success, or fame. We are fundamentally social. What's that mean?
Okay, I'm bringing.
That we're just social in every aspect of life that as human beings, it's like we need to be social, like unconsciously seek out to be social.
Yes. Yes. Anybody else? We are fundamentally social. We need to belong. We need to fit in and be liked. We need to have people we can count on to be there for us. We need to feel we're part of something larger than ourselves, a family or a group, a team or ensemble, working toward a common shared goal. We need to feel there are people who care about us, believe in us, and will be there for us. If you feel as though you can't do it alone, that's because you were never meant to. Our health is highly dependent on our loving connections with others. Love, connectedness, and empathy are not just feel-good issues, they're life and death issues. Loneliness leads to poor physical and mental health. Social isolation grinds the body through a physical wear and tear essentially akin to premature aging. People who are lonely are more prone to disease and death. Their health declines earlier, their brain functioning declines sooner, they live shorter lives than people who feel loved and socially supported. And that's some of the references. Africans believe in the relation between man and man. Westerners,
Are you sharing any PowerPoint slide now?
yeah, I'm sharing slides. People
We
aren't
don't,
seeing my slides?
no, after the break, we don't see the slide. Could you please reshare?
Oh, okay. Whoa. Okay. I'm glad you said something.
Can I help you with the audio? Yeah.
Okay, can you see that now?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll go back a little bit if I can. Okay, so this is where I started, and then I read that from the talk, and then I read that from the talk that good relations are more important than a lot of money, greater career success, or fame if you want to be happy and healthy. And then I asked this question. Then I talked about this that we need to belong, we need to fit in and be liked. We need to have people we can count on who are there for us. We need to feel we're part of something larger than ourselves. Mom was at this thing. We need to feel there are people who care about us, believe in us, and will be there for us. Can you see now? Is it okay? And you can hear me?
Yes, we can see your slides.
Okay. If you feel as though you can't do it alone, you were never meant to. Our health is dependent on loving connections with others. Loneliness leads to poorer physical and mental health. People who are lonely are more prone to infections and disease and live shorter lives. Those are some of the references. Okay, and then this is where Mong told me that you were no longer seeing the slides. So this is a quote by an African anthropologist many years ago. Africans believe in the relation between man and man. Westerners increasingly believe in the relation between man and object. African philosophy bases all explanation on human relationships. Western philosophy bases them on science. Medicine is a good illustration of this. Africans believe that to protect oneself and one's family from disease, one must live peacefully with one's neighbors, abstain from breaking taboos, and obey the laws of gods and men. Westerners believe that one need only take the right pill or have the right operation. But Africans define these socially, not biologically. And when I first encountered this in the 1970s, I thought those stupid Africans. But now we know how wise the Africans were and how right they were about this to a large extent. Being socially excluded is literally painful. It activates the same brain network as that for physical pain. And the more social pain you feel, the more this brain network is activated. Dan Siegel talks about interpersonal neurobiology because social relations shape and change our neurobiology, our brains. Our brains work better when we're not feeling lonely or socially isolated, and that's particularly true for prefrontal cortex and executive functions. In one study, researchers told a group of subjects that they'd have close relationships throughout their lives. They told another group the opposite, that they wouldn't have close relationships. And they told a third group unrelated bad news. On simple memorization questions that don't require executive functions, the groups perform comparably. But on logical reasoning that requires executive functions, those told to expect that they'd be lonely performed worse. Other researchers have not tried to manipulate this, but simply given subjects a survey when they came in the lab. And that survey included things like, do you feel socially supported? Do you feel lonely? And they found that prefrontal cortex functioned less efficiently in those who felt lonely or isolated. You read where I talked about LC Stemma and how it helps executive functions. Venezuela's national system of youth and children orchestras, known as El Sistema, is the brainchild of a Venezuelan economist, conductor, and composer, Jose Antonio Abreu, who in 1975 envisioned classical music training as a social intervention that could transform the lives of children who were poor, at risk, or special needs. And it's now spread around the world. It's in over 350 countries. In what way is building community a central part of El Sistema? You heard about El Sistema a little bit in my TED Talk. You learned a little bit of El Sistema in my article about it. Can you think of in what way it helps build community, and how is that a central part of El Sistema? Okay, that's a hard question because what you read didn't emphasize that.
I think it,
Oh, good.
Part of the program is putting on a big show and being part of an orchestra, and you can't have a very good sounding orchestra if everybody isn't feeling bonded and together.
Yep. But it goes further than that because there are lots of programs that are orchestra programs or band programs where you play together with others. But LC Stemma is different in an important way. Rather than aiming to produce great musicians, LC Stemma aims to create community. So rather than waiting until you first achieve a certain level of proficiency in playing your instrument before playing together with others, which is the norm, right? First, you have to get good enough on your instrument till we'll let you play with others. In LC Stemma, everybody plays together from the start. Mistakes are okay. They're what happens on the way to mastery. The important thing is the joy of making music together. The primary skill you learn in LC Stemma is not your instrument. The primary skill is working together. It's using the orchestra as a metaphor for how we work together as a society to become fantastic at working together. Another different way in which we're fundamentally social is this. The social environment fundamentally affects um, who we are and how we feel. We are different with different people. You probably act differently with your parents, your friends, and your professors. Different things are important in class versus on the sports field versus when visiting a friend who's ill. And we're affected by the emotions of the people around us. Even babies pick up on the emotions of their caregivers. I'm an only child. So when I was born, I was my mother's first baby. It turned out to be the only one, but I was obviously the first. And when she gave me my first bath, she was terrified that I would drown or something bad would happen. She was worried about doing it. And as a baby, I could pick up on that, so I started crying. And my father got so upset that his daughter is crying that my mother went downstairs to get our neighbor who already had three children so that she could help. And as soon as the neighbor took me in her hands, I stopped crying because she wasn't worried, right? And I could sense she wasn't worried, so I stopped crying. Babies, even newborn babies, can pick up on the emotions of others. Can you think of any examples in your own life of this? That the social environment affects who we are and how we feel, being different with different people in different environments, affected by the emotions of other people. Can you think of any examples in your own life?
Okay, here is one and two. I'll go after.
Kind of similar to what you said. I remember one time we went to Canada and we were kind of lost. And my dad was really stressed out about it. And normally my dad's a very like calm, stoic kind of guy. So seeing he was stressed, I started to get really stressed out. And I started crying, and then my younger brother started crying. So it's kind of like a chain reaction of like he was stressed out, and then I got stressed out, and then my mom, it's kind of like a chain reaction. So once he was stressed out as men, he kind of stressed out everybody.
Great example. Somebody
Okay,
else.
here's one more. I saw a hand up there.
I'm a kayak guide, and so when they're like going into trouble, and I've like seen that it's really important to be like the calm person for them to look to, because if not, then they start to freak out, and then it's a whole chain reaction. Yeah.
Right. That's a great example. In fact, there's something in developmental psychology called social referencing. It's that children are going to pick up on whether it's safe or not safe, it's scary or whatever, by how the adult is acting and reacting. So the adult can define the situation for them, just like you did with the kayakers. Exactly. Somebody else. How are you different with different people?
Okay, here is one coming.
I've heard of the term like code switching before. It's like when people go from like the home environment to school or like so sweet that is speaking different languages.
Yep. That's a great example. Yep. One more, maybe?
Okay, one more.
I know. Notice that I talk differently and I act differently depending on like who I'm working with, especially Like if it's a early morning shift and everyone is tired, and if I'm like not feeling tired, I feel my energy kind of going down to match theirs. It's the opposite is true too.
Yep. Good examples, everybody. Okay. Americans seem to have to be one thing. I and my Indian friends are able to be many different kinds of people in different situations. I feel very comfortable slipping back and forth from being a professor to being a painter to being a mother and a wife. There's no me in isolation to be considered abstractly. I'm the totality of the roles I live in relation to specific others. If some of my roles change, the others will of necessity change also, literally making me a different person. The Dalai Lama has said, now I'm changing subjects a little bit. The Dalai Lama has said, if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. He also said, if you want to be happy, practice compassion. How does if you want to be happy, practice compassion relate to the paper you read by Aiken et al., Happiness and Pro-Social Behavior? What did you learn from the Aiken et al. Paper on happiness and pro-social behavior?
Anyone?
It talked about spending and it talked about volunteering.
It's not that volunteering, like spending time with others and feeling better, so not only helps others, but it also like helps yourself, like it reduces your depression, it makes you happier and it like connects you with people.
That's right. They found that volunteering helps the volunteer as much as it helps the people that you're volunteering to help. Happiness runs in a circular motion. Research shows that what brings people the most happiness is making other people happy, helping others. Being kind to others is not only good for others, it's good for the doer. Making charitable donations activates the reward network in the brain more than receiving the same amount of money for yourself. Giving it away to somebody else activates your reward system in the brain more than receiving that same amount of money for yourself. There, Warren Buffett's sister has funded this program across many American universities. And in the course, students are given $100,000 as a class to give away. And the students in the class have to decide as a class where the money should go. It's an experience in seeing for yourself how giving money away to others makes you feel. The way one learns the truth of the way to be happy is to focus on making others happy is through experience. According to the James Langer theory of emotion, if you act like you're good, you will become good. Rabbi Abraham Heschel taught that the act teaches you the meaning of the act. What does that mean? Do you agree? We are made kind by being kind. How could that work? If you act like you're good, you will become good. The act teaches you the meaning of the act. We are made kind by being kind. How could that work? What does that mean?
I am bringing the mic. There are two students.
I feel like it just kind of reminds me of the idea of like fake it till you make it, like do something until it just comes so naturally to you that it's part of who you are.
Good, good. Somebody else.
There was one more here that. Oh, he said that's what exactly he's gonna say.
Anybody else?
I guess being kind takes practice. Like if you want to get good at anything, you need to practice it. So practicing acts of kindness makes you actually kind.
Good, good. According to the James Langer theory of emotion and Bem's self-perception theory and Sartre in No Exit, you look at how you act to discover who you are. You learn who you are by seeing how you act. So James Langer and Bem both thought that you had no internal access to who you are. The only way you'd figure out who you are is like being an observer of yourself and seeing how you act. So if you notice that you act a certain way, you conclude, oh, I'm a person who does that kind of thing. And according to what Heschel said, the act teaches you the meaning of the act. You only understand something by experiencing it, by doing it. For example, somebody could tell you what making love is like, but if you've never made love, you're not going to really understand what making love is like. The same with riding a bike. You need to experience it to understand what it really is. For Heschel, the act demands attention, like sports or music, regardless of your motivation beforehand. You can't think about other things while you're doing it, or you won't do it well. To do an action well, you must give it your full attention. Thus, doing the act purifies the intention. And Aristotle said what one of the people in the class said, we are what we repeatedly do. And he said this in the 4th century BC, guys. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. We don't act rightly because we have virtue or excellence, but we rather have these because we've acted rightly. These virtues are formed in a person by doing the actions. We are what we repeatedly do. For people to understand the deep truth of, if you want to be happy, practice compassion. They need to experience compassion, practice compassion, and experience for themselves the joy it brings them. So regularly, every day, do simple things to be nice to other people, whether it's holding the door for somebody or inviting someone sitting alone to join you, helping someone pick up things he or she's dropped, offering your seat to an older person, or complimenting someone's smile, and experience how terrific you feel when you receive a smile in return. Write down the nice things you've done each day in a kindness journal, not to hand it in for praise or reward, but to help you get in the habit of doing nice things. Also, you can look back on it and see that you are someone who does nice things for other people. You're a kind person. Research shows that what brings people the most happiness is not money or creature comforts, hedonistic pleasures, but rather feeling that what you are doing has meaning, that it benefits others, that you're united with others in trying to achieve an important shared goal. Carol Riff's work shows that what makes a life worth living are things like positive relations with others and a purpose in life. Feeling that what you do matters, that you're helping to make the world a better place, helping to advance a goal that's larger than yourself. And these are some of the references for that. Young people are naturally, intrinsically moved to want to right wrongs and make the world a better place. They can imagine a more just world. You can imagine a world where the natural environment is respected and cared for. Schools often emphasize individual work, ignoring how powerful the motivation to work hard is. If what you're doing is going to help a team or your family or a community. Now, you read a paper by David Yeager and colleagues. What was the sense of purpose message in their study? What did you learn from this message? From this paper? What did you find? What was their sense of purpose message? In the paper, Boring but Important, by David Yeager and colleagues.
Yeah, the title was boring but important. That's the thing.
What was their sense of purpose message?
I guess like you'll be more satisfied if you have more purpose in what you're doing.
Close.
Okay, here is another person.
students performed better on assignments they were given when they saw both the sense of that it helped themselves, but also that it at the same time helped the community or the better of the world.
That's much closer. They gave two different kinds of reasons for working hard in school. The sense of purpose message gave you what reason for working hard in school? It's close to what those two people said. You should work hard in school in order.
Anyone?
Okay, well, both people came close, but it wasn't exactly right. The sense of purpose message was that you should work hard in school because the skills you acquire will help you make the world a better place, help you contribute to your community, or help your family. It's all about helping others. It's not that it'll help me and help others. It's just about that it's going to help others. And they contrasted, and there were three parts to this. So what they did was it only took like 30 minutes. So for the first 10 minutes, they listened to some adult lecture them about how if they work hard in school, they'll acquire skills that'll help them help their family or their community. Then they heard somebody their own age talk about the same thing. And then the last 10 minutes, they were to talk about how skills they acquired in school might help them be able to help their family or their community. And the control condition was very similar, but it was a self-oriented message. It said you should work hard in school because the skills you acquire will help you get a better job or earn more money. It's all about you should work hard in school so that you can do better in your own life. Okay? So one is an altruistic thing where you're going to do it to help others, and the other is a more self-oriented thing. You should do it, you should try hard in school to be able to help yourself. And what they found was just like somebody said, when they gave students an incredibly boring task that they invented just to make it incredibly boring, the sense of purpose message increased high school students' willingness to work at it and complete this really boring task. Whereas the self-oriented message did nothing to help students' willingness to do this task or stick with it. And then in another study, they delivered the sense of purpose message or the self-oriented message to about 400 students across very diverse high schools in 13 geographically diverse locations across the US. It raised the sense of purpose message, raised low performing students' GPAs in core academic courses. The self-oriented message had no effect on grades at all or any other message, any other measure of school performance. And that's some of the references on their work. Okay, I wasn't sure if I'd have time for what follows, but I think I do, so I'm going to go on. Before I talked about that in order to understand the deep truth of if you want to be happy, practice compassion, I talked about how you need to experience how happy it makes you to be compassionate and kind to other people. Related to that, we can tell children that people have more in common than they have differences. They shouldn't fear or dislike people simply because they come from a different culture. But preaching in the abstract is not the same as experiencing. Children need to meet others from different ethnic groups. They need to work alongside them to achieve a common goal, as on a team. They need to see commonalities for themselves. Similarly, for believing in yourself, it's great for there to be people who say they believe in you, but you need to experience for yourself that you're capable to really fully believe that. Thus, people need doable challenges. That is, opportunities to do things that enable them to see for themselves that they're capable. Pride, self-confidence, and joy come from seeing yourself succeed at something you know was difficult, even in the youngest infants. Prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain I specialize in, is overrated, guys. To learn something new, we need prefrontal. But after something is no longer new, people who perform best often recruit prefrontal cortex least. So this is neuroimaging from the 1990s, the early days of neuroimaging, and we gave a task that required executive functions. And what we found is some subjects showed bilateral activation of prefrontal cortex when they did this task. Some subjects showed activation of prefrontal on one side only. Some subjects showed it on the other side only. All of that is fine. They're all showing activation in prefrontal. But 2 subjects didn't show activation in prefrontal at all. This is Ruth Brigida and Kathy O'Craven, collaborators with me on the study. And because they were familiar with the task, prefrontal activation dropped out. When something is new, those who recruit prefrontal most usually perform best. But when you're really good at it, often you're not using prefrontal as much. You want most tasks to be so familiar and well learned that prefrontal cortex is not needed. You want those tasks to be handed off to older brain regions that have had far longer to perfect their functioning. They can subsume task performance ever so much more efficiently than can prefrontal. When we try to be in control, we don't do things nearly as well as when we aren't trying to be in control. And prefrontal is all about top-down control. When we try to force things, we often mess them up. Related to the earlier point of letting go, of not trying to be in control. A child may know intellectually at the level of prefrontal that he shouldn't hit another. But in the heat of the moment, if that knowledge hasn't become automatic, passed on from prefrontal to older brain regions, the child will hit another. Though if asked, he knows he shouldn't do it. It's the difference between knowing what one should do versus having it be second nature or automatic, not dependent on prefrontal. The only way something becomes automatic, becomes passed off from prefrontal, is through action, repeated action. Nothing else will do. Okay, and that's the end, really. So now there's time for your thoughts and reactions to the stuff we covered today. Does it relate to your life? Does it relate to anything you've studied? Is it totally boring?
Yeah, your thoughts, reflections. You can also use the framework that I shared with you before, that I used to know, now I know, and I wonder. So, there we go.
I just have one thing that I was thinking about when you were talking about something. I kind of forgot because you talked about a lot of different things, but I kind of thought of like the quote of like, don't sweat the small stuff and everything's the small stuff. Because there's so many things in life that you like choose to, you're like focusing on your joy with. And there's so many things that happen in life that you're kind of like either worried about or like stressed about, but it's your like choice and to like.
That's right. That's a great point, right? What's upsetting us is our reaction to it. And if we don't get so upset about it, it's not going to upset us so much. It's not the event that's upsetting us. It's how we're interpreting and reacting to the event that's upsetting us. So we can choose not to be so upset. And we often get so upset about such little things that really don't matter.
Okay, one more.
I think for me with like getting upset with like small stuff is like in the moment I get so upset and then after the fact I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have gotten that upset about it. And then the next time I get like upset about a small thing, like I don't think about that. I don't think about, oh, it's just a small thing. I don't think about it until after the fact.
Yep. Yep. That happens to a lot of us. And that's something that a mindfulness practice can help with because we need to practice being able to not react like we're the automatic way, but instead take time and respond more the way we'd like to. Because all of us have triggers, all of us have things that have us react in ways we wish we didn't. And we can change that. We can not react that way. We can choose not to. in a school program called Paths, they tell the children when you get really upset at another child, instead of hitting the child, do what a turtle does and get in your shell, which they mean is hold yourself really tightly and take a deep breath. And I think that's brilliant because they don't say to the children, if you get really upset at another child, wait, because that doesn't compute. No, they're not going to do that. Instead, what they do is give children an alternative thing to do, which is hold themselves really tightly and take a deep breath. And those things actually happen to help you calm down. So they're imposing a very short delay and having children do something that calms them down. And the preschoolers and elementary school children love this. And after a very short time, they take it home. And when they see a parent start to get upset, like at their sibling or something, they call to the parent, do turtle, do turtle. Other thoughts?
Thoughts, reflection. Okay, I'm getting my.
Hi, Professor. Thank you. I was really interested in the piece earlier on where you were talking about the damage that can be done by repressing negative emotions and the negative memories. And I was familiar with a study that came out recently, I think 2023, by a couple of professors at University of Cambridge. I think I just looked it up and I forget the names. I think it's Mamat and Anderson. It was a small sample size, but they trained participants to actually actively repress negative memories rather than focusing their thoughts on them. And they found some positive correlation with, I guess, happiness moving forward, which kind of challenges this narrative that we kind of all take for granted that repression is a bad thing. I was just wondering if you had any like thoughts or response, or if you were familiar with that study or that paper.
I'm not familiar with that study, but the person at Cambridge by the last name of Anderson that I know is Michael Anderson. And Michael Anderson made his career on something like telling people not to think about white bears. Because he found if you tell people not to do something, they can't help but do it. So none of you in the room were probably thinking about white bears. But if I tell you, okay, guys, now for the next minute, don't think about white bears, several of you will think about white bears because that's what happens in humans. So his work is about how trying to repress something makes it come out anyway, and it's not good. So it makes me think that that study, I would need to see that study because it's very rare for anybody to find that repression is a good thing. And Mike's work is about how repression is a bad thing. So I'd need to see the study. You can send it to me if you'd like.
I will. Thank you.
Okay, he says he's going to send it to you. Okay, I have two students. I'll go one by one.
You mentioned earlier about how stress connects to lower executive function and how that can make it seem like you have ADHD. And I was wondering if you had any like thoughts or opinions or like recent research that you recommend about like the way that ADHD what's it called? The way that it's yeah, the like the racialized diagnosis of ADHD, like especially like in young Black children.
Yeah,
And if you have any like any insight or anything about that, especially because of the way like the new DSM came out recently as well, you know, about how
yeah.
they're changing all those standards.
So I think a lot of children are diagnosed with ADHD when they don't have ADHD. Many of them are diagnosed with ADHD because they're stressed, either because they're stressed at home or in their present life, or they were very severely stressed earlier in their life. They had some traumatic or very adverse experience. And that can make you look like you have ADHD, but what really needs to be addressed is reducing their stress, not giving them medication for ADHD. And little boys are often diagnosed for ADHD because they're normal little boys. A little boy of 3, 4, 5 years of age is not meant to be sitting listening to a lecture for 15 minutes. It's not developmentally appropriate. And in the US, they're really pushing for elementary schools to be like early colleges where you sit and listen to lectures. First of all, you don't learn as well in a lecture, right? You're going to learn more through doing. That's what I've been talking about. And secondly, little kids can't sit for a long period. It's not that they have ADHD, it's that they're normal. And so it's very frustrating that so many kids get diagnosed with ADHD when that's not the case. And then they're given these medications, and there are no studies on the long-term effects of those medications on the brain. Nobody's ever studied that. You
There was
said there was
a-
somebody else, Mom?
Yeah, there was another student.
So I had a question at the beginning of your TED Talk. You mentioned, I think it was South Korea and Sweden, about how they value their teachers and how they're getting the most, like, the best people to be teachers. So
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble understanding you. Can you start again?
you mentioned at the beginning of your TED Talk, like, I think it was like South Korea and Sweden, how they have like the best teachers and they really value their teachers. How would you recommend with like developing executive functions? How would you best recommend a teacher approaches that, especially if they don't have like the resources to, do all this storytelling or do, woodworking or plays or dances? How would you best recommend that they develop their students' executive functions?
Well, a lot of my work research has shown that you don't need expensive materials. You don't need anything. You just need the teacher. For example, to tell stories, you don't need anything, right? You can tell stories that folk tales or stories about your family or stories that you've read without having any books. One of the best ways to help young children develop executive functions is social pretend play, like playing doctor and patient or cops and robbers, because you have to remember what role you picked and what role your friends picked, right? If you're planning the robbery, you don't want to accidentally tell the kid who's has the role of cop. I mean, that would be disastrous. You have to remember who has what role. You have to inhibit acting out of character. So if you're doing a scenario where you're picked that you're the baby in the family, you can't all of a sudden get up and drive the family car. You have to stay in character. And your friends may take that play scenario in ways you never envisioned. So on the fly, in real time, you have to flexibly adjust. So you're using working memory, inhibitory control, cognitive flexibility in the context of play. So I think the most important things that teachers can do is have children actively learning, hands-on learning, because you don't learn so much when you sit in a lecture. And that's true at college, and that's true at preschool and everything in between. You need to be using the information you need to be doing. And teachers need to make it very clear that they believe in each kid, that they know you're going to succeed. And if teachers have that attitude, if a child is having trouble mastering something, the attitude is not, well, you're a stupid kid. The attitude is that there must be something in the way I'm presenting it that isn't clicking for you. So together, we're going to figure out a way so you can understand this. Because I know that everybody in this classroom is capable of doing that. So if somebody's not getting it, we together have to figure out a way how you can get it. And it's so important that the teachers communicate loud and clear that he or she believes in every single student. We know you can master this. The example I give sometimes is that toddlers fall on the way to walking. No toddler ever gets up perfectly and walks perfectly the first time. You fall. A toddler might fall 4 or 5 times on a given day. It would never occur to us to say to the toddler, you get a D in walking on one of those days. It would never occur to us. What we say is, I know you're going to be able to do this. Don't worry, I know you're going to be able to do this. We need the same attitude for students in school. I know you're going to be able to do this because you are. All of you are capable. And so as long as we communicate that and we work together with the student, they'll succeed.
Okay, here is one more.
Also talking about your TED Talk, at the beginning, you mentioned how like children in early childhood should focus on play-based learning and not academic instruction. I work administration at a preschool and we've seen a lot of rising rates in transitional kindergarten. And like we get a lot of questions about whether we like recommend it or what we think about it. And I was kind of wondering what you thought about it, since transitional kindergarten is kind of like the rise in early like instruction for academics and not play-based learning.
I think kindergarten and preschool should about being enjoying being in school and learning basic skills, not academics. Finland always has the students who do the best on the PISA exams in fourth grade. Those are academic achievement tests, academic performance tests that are given worldwide. And the kids from Finland always outperform every other country. In Finland, they do not start school until second grade, until they're 7 years old. They don't learn how to read until they're in second grade, 7 years old. And yet, by the time they're in fourth grade, they're outperforming everybody across the world. So you don't need to start early to have kids do well. In fact, starting early can be detrimental to their doing well because they may not be able to master it at an early age. And so they feel like they can't succeed in school. They feel like they're stupid. And that's going to hurt them all the way through. So I'm a total fan of the way Tools of the Mind does it, the way Montessori does it, the way Waldorf does it. Have the kids enjoy being in school, enjoy learning, encourage their curiosity, have them learn social skills like being kind to each other, have them learn basic skills like thinking and problem solving, but don't worry about the academics. Well, I think we're just about out of time. Is there one more comment or are we done?
One more comment or questions, reflections? Okay, you had. Okay, here is one student.
I had a question. In one of the papers we read, there was, in this lecture as well, there was kind of, there were, parts that talked about, like, sorry, the trying to inhibit the stressors themselves.
I'm sorry, I
Um,
didn't hear the last sentence.
trying to inhibit the stressors themselves. And I was wondering, for older students around high school age who are already and have been showing increased interest like over the decades in pursuing AP classes in that kind of stress, kind of normalized stress environment, I was wondering what your thoughts were on how we would like how we should go about like what we would do in like kindergarten or like younger ages, like pulling into the like how to make it not just lecture style, like how would we implement that in like
Yeah, that's a great question because I'm very frustrated with how they prepare teachers in university. Because they tell you that hands-on learning is the way to learn, but they have you practice lecturing and not practice doing things hands-on. So, for example, in Montessori classes, they have kids who are 3, 4 years of age do little puzzles or pegboards, and the pegs are different sizes in very systematic ways. So they might differ just in height, or they might differ just in width, or they might differ in diameter. Now, they never tell the word diameter to a 3 or 4 year old, but doing the pegboard, you learn to understand what diameter is because that's the only way you can solve the pegboard where it's increasing the size of diameter. So if you put a small peg in a large hole, the large peg isn't going to fit any place. So you come to understand these concepts at a deep level without having any verbal labels. Um, so um, uh, I for example, in Tools of the Mind, they have all the children get a picture book and get in a pair with another child and take turns telling the story that goes with the pictures in your book. Well, all the children are really excited to tell their story and nobody wants to be the listener. So they give each child, one child in each of the pairs, a picture of an ear, simple line drawing. And they say, ears don't talk, ears listen. And with that concrete reminder, the child's able to listen. Without it, they wouldn't be able to, and everybody would try to talk at the same time. But with that reminder, they can listen. And then after a few months, they don't need it anymore because they've internalized the listener role. So there are lots of simple things you can do to scaffold children's ability to be able to self-regulate, to be able to act appropriately. And once they have a minimum of self-regulation, then the teacher doesn't have to be in control of the whole class. You can let the children work individually or in pairs or in small groups because you're not worried about it evolving into chaos because children have enough self-control and inhibitory control to be able to work without you constantly supervising them. And then you can teach the way you want. So you can give individual attention to this child or that. You can let the children work at different levels. They can work on different things. You can take time to give a lesson to one child without everybody else being bored because everybody else is doing their own thing. I would suggest looking at tools of the mind. I have a couple papers published on that, looking at a couple things on Montessori for ideas about how to make it work.
Okay, great. So this is probably the time. So I would like to say huge thank you, and we are very grateful. And
Thank you,
Professor Adele
everybody.
Diamond, you are always working to make the world a better place, and we are so inspired by your work. And thank you for taking such a time in your busy schedule to help our students. So thank you, and thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Great.